Throughout life, every person we meet leaves some kind of imprint on us. Some arrive with love, loyalty, and genuine connection, enriching our journey with joy and mutual growth. Others come to remind us of the harsher realities of disappointment, betrayal, and emotional exhaustion. Yet, the most difficult situations often arise when we find ourselves clinging to someone who clearly does not value us, someone who does not reciprocate our care, love, or effort in the way we deserve. Why do we do this? Why is it so painfully hard to let go of a person who consistently shows us, through their actions, that they are not willing to meet us halfway? Carl Jung, one of the most influential thinkers in psychology, offered a profound explanation. He believed the answer is not primarily about the other person. It is about ourselves. According to Jung, the human unconscious operates through symbols and patterns. This means that much of what we experience in relationships is not random. Rather, it is a reflection of what is happening inside us, often at a level we are not consciously aware of. Think about it. Have you ever felt that you keep attracting the same type of relationship over and over again? Maybe the people look different. Maybe the circumstances change. But the core pattern, the dynamic, remains the same. One-sided affection, constant disappointment, giving more than you receive. This is not a coincidence. Jung would argue that these repetitive patterns are the unconscious mind projecting unresolved inner conflicts outward into the world. In other words, the painful relationships we hold on to are mirrors. They are reflections of the wounds we have not yet faced within ourselves. And this is why letting go is not just an external act of cutting ties with someone else. It is a deep, transformative inner process. When we refuse to release a person who drains us, what we are really doing is refusing to face the lesson our own soul is trying to teach us. Think of all the times you have stayed in a relationship you knew wasn't serving you. Maybe you justified the other person's behavior, convincing yourself they would change if you just gave them enough time. Maybe you told yourself that if you tried a little harder, they would finally see your worth. Maybe you believed that enduring mistreatment was part of love. The hard truth is this: the problem is not only the other person, it is also in what their presence activates within you. Jung explained that our most complicated relationships often mirror what he called the shadow. The shadow is the part of ourselves that we deny, ignore, or suppress. It holds the traits, fears, and wounds we do not want to acknowledge. The shadow is not necessarily negative in itself, but when it is denied, it controls us from the background. If deep down, you secretly believe you are not worthy enough, you will unconsciously attract relationships that confirm this belief. If you believe love must be fought for, or that you must prove your worth to receive affection, you will continue to draw in situations that reinforce this painful pattern. This is why Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So, what happens when we finally decide to let go? The moment we choose to release what no longer serves us, we begin to reclaim control over our own story. We stop living under the illusion that we are destined to suffer for love. We stop begging for scraps of affection. We realize we hold the power to step away from what drains us and walk toward what allows us to evolve. Of course, it is natural to feel fear when faced with the idea of letting go. The human psyche is wired to cling to what is familiar, even if that familiarity brings us pain. The unknown, by contrast, feels terrifying. What if we never find someone else? What if we end up alone? What if we regret leaving? These questions create resistance inside us. But Jung taught that true growth only occurs when we confront our inner darkness, the fears, doubts, and wounds that keep us bound to harmful dynamics. Letting go, then, is not an act of weakness or defeat. It is one of the purest acts of self-love. It is a declaration that says, "I see myself. I respect myself. I will only choose relationships that align with my true worth." To let go does not mean to hate, nor does it mean to wish harm upon another person. It simply means freeing yourself from the need to force yourself into a story where you do not belong. It means creating space for new experiences where you are genuinely seen, valued, and loved. When you take this step, something powerful happens. Your energy begins to shift, and when your energy shifts, the types of people and experiences you attract also begin to change. Jung's concept of synchronicity, the idea that life unfolds through meaningful coincidences, becomes especially evident in these moments. It is as if the universe waits for you to make the choice before it can open the right doors for you. Think of the relationships that have pushed you to your limits, the ones that made you question your worth, your strength, or your identity. These relationships are not punishments. They are teachers. They arise to highlight the parts of yourself that need healing. And often, that healing can only happen when you gather the courage to say, enough. The unconscious is always speaking to us, sending signals and warnings, but too often we ignore them. We justify pain, minimize red flags, and convince ourselves that sacrifice is necessary for love. But the truth is this: real love is not constant struggle. Real love flows naturally, without force, without the need to prove anything. If you find yourself having to convince someone to value you, then you are in the wrong place. At the heart of this process is the question, what do I truly deserve? If your answer is love, respect, and reciprocity, then you must begin to move toward relationships that embody those qualities. You cannot step into that reality while holding on to something that breaks you. Letting go is not just about releasing another person. It is about choosing yourself. It is about deciding that you will no longer tolerate relationships that diminish you. It is about recognizing your value and creating the space for people who can truly see it. The truth is this: as long as you cling to what is misaligned, you close the door to what could genuinely fulfill you. The universe cannot place what is meant for you into hands that are still tightly gripping the past. And so, the first step is awareness. To pause and ask yourself, why am I holding on? What part of me is being reflected in this relationship? What wound am I trying to soothe through someone else? This reflection is where healing begins. Jung's work reminds us that our outer relationships are simply mirrors of our inner relationship with ourselves. The journey of letting go is, at its core, the journey of choosing to finally value yourself. We have explored why letting go feels so difficult and how, according to Jung, it is often less about the other person and more about the unresolved parts of ourselves. Now let's go deeper into this idea by examining the role of the shadow, one of Jung's most powerful and transformative concepts. The shadow represents the hidden aspects of our personality, the parts of ourselves that we deny, suppress, or refuse to acknowledge. This can include qualities we consider negative, such as jealousy, anger, or insecurity, but it also includes disowned strengths, confidence, independence, and even the belief in our own worth. When we do not integrate these aspects into our conscious awareness, they operate from the unconscious, shaping our choices and relationships without us realizing it. This is why relationships can feel so mysterious. On the surface, it might seem like you're unlucky in love, or like people keep mistreating you for no reason. But at a deeper level, your unconscious is orchestrating these encounters, drawing you toward the very situations that reflect the unhealed parts of yourself. For example, if deep inside you hold the belief that love must be earned, that you are not worthy unless you prove yourself, then you will likely attract relationships where you are forced to overgive, over-sacrifice, and overextend. These relationships will mirror your unconscious conviction that love equals struggle. If, on the other hand, you secretly believe you are unworthy of affection, you may find yourself drawn to people who are emotionally unavailable, dismissive, or indifferent. Their lack of love confirms what you already fear inside. In this way, your relationships become a mirror of your internal dialogue. This is not about blaming yourself for the behavior of others. Rather, it is about recognizing the inner mechanism that keeps you locked into harmful cycles. When Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate," he was pointing to this exact process. Think about the relationships in your past. Do you notice a pattern? Do you see the same themes repeating? Maybe it is the feeling of being unseen, unheard, or undervalued. Maybe it is the dynamic of always giving more than you receive. Maybe it is the fear of abandonment that keeps you clinging to people who treat you poorly. These are not coincidences, they are invitations. Each painful relationship is an opportunity to bring light to the shadow, to finally face the wounds you have been carrying inside. Jung believed that the shadow is not inherently bad. In fact, it holds tremendous potential for growth. When you bring awareness to it, when you face those hidden beliefs and fears, you begin to integrate them. Instead of being controlled by your shadow, you learn to work with it, transforming it into a source of strength. So how does this play out in real life? Let's imagine someone who grew up in a household where love was conditional. Perhaps they were only praised when they achieved something, or only received attention when they behaved in a certain way. Over time, this child learns a damaging lesson. I must earn love. I must prove myself to be worthy. Fast forward to adulthood, and this person repeatedly attracts partners who make them feel like they have to fight for affection. They find themselves working tirelessly to prove their value, tolerating neglect or mistreatment in the hope of finally being acknowledged. This dynamic is painful, but it is also familiar. And the psyche clings to what is familiar, even when it hurts. This is the power of the shadow. It pulls us back into old wounds, repeating them until we finally decide to confront the belief at the core. I am not enough as I am. Once that belief is brought to light, everything begins to change. You realize that you do not need to earn love. You deserve it simply by existing. You realize that the version of love you grew up with is not the only version of love available to you. And with this awareness, you begin to choose differently. Letting go, then, becomes more than just ending a relationship. It becomes an act of breaking free from a shadow pattern. It is the moment when you say, I no longer need to repeat this cycle. I no longer need to prove my worth. I choose a new story. This is not an easy process. Facing the shadow requires courage. It means being honest with yourself about the beliefs you carry, even when they are uncomfortable. It means acknowledging the ways you may have allowed yourself to remain in situations that did not honor you. But this honesty is also the key to liberation. Jung often emphasized that the shadow is not meant to be destroyed or rejected. It is meant to be integrated. Integration means shining a light on what was once hidden, accepting it, and choosing consciously how to respond. For example, when you recognize that part of you fears abandonment, you can begin to soothe that fear from within instead of clinging to relationships that trigger it. When you realize that part of you doubts your worth, you can begin to affirm your value rather than seeking constant validation from others. Integration transforms relationships because it changes the energy you bring into them. Instead of unconsciously projecting your wounds, you begin to engage from a place of awareness. You no longer chase those who cannot see you because you now see yourself. This is the essence of Jung's concept of individuation, the process of becoming whole. Individuation is not about becoming perfect or flawless. It is about embracing all parts of yourself, the light and the shadow, and living authentically. So the question is, how do you begin this process in practical terms? First, you must become aware of your patterns. Reflect on your past relationships. What themes keep repeating? Where do you consistently feel hurt, unseen, or undervalued? Second, ask yourself what belief these experiences are reinforcing. Do they echo the thought that you are not enough? That love is conditional? That you must fight to be valued? Naming the belief brings it into consciousness. Third, challenge the belief. Is it really true that you must struggle for love? Is it really true that you are unworthy of affection unless you prove yourself? Of course not. These beliefs were formed long ago, often in childhood, and they no longer serve you. Finally, begin to practice self-compassion. Treat yourself with the kindness and respect you have been seeking from others. When you value yourself, you change the entire dynamic. You no longer tolerate relationships that drain you, because your inner world no longer matches that energy. This process is not instant. It takes time, patience, and courage. But every small step you take toward awareness is a step away from the old cycle and toward freedom. Letting go is painful because it means confronting the shadow. It means saying goodbye not only to a person, but to a version of yourself that has been repeating the same wounds. But as Jung taught, there is no awakening without pain. The pain of letting go is not meaningless. It is the doorway to transformation. So as you reflect on your own journey, ask yourself, what is my shadow trying to show me through this relationship? What belief am I ready to release? What new story am I willing to live? When you can answer these questions honestly, you are no longer a prisoner of the shadow. You are on the path of individuation. You are stepping into your true power, the power to choose yourself. Let's turn to the next critical question. If we know a relationship is hurting us, why is letting go still so incredibly difficult? On the surface, the answer seems simple. Because we don't want to lose the other person. But if we dig deeper, we see that the fear of letting go is not truly about the person. It is about what they represent to us. The human psyche is wired for familiarity. Even when that familiarity causes pain, it feels safer than the unknown. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff. Behind you is rocky, uncomfortable terrain, but at least you know it. Ahead of you is an open sky, vast and uncertain. Which direction feels scarier? Most people instinctively cling to the rocky ground, because the mind whispers, at least here, I know what to expect. This is why so many people remain in relationships that drain them. The comfort of the familiar becomes stronger than the fear of the unknown. The mind convinces us that leaving means losing something valuable, when in reality, what we are losing is the pain we've mistaken for love. Jung once said, unnecessary suffering is a choice. And yet, people choose suffering every day, by holding on to relationships that no longer serve them. Why? Because of fear. Fear of loneliness. Fear of regret. Fear of never finding anyone else. Fear that maybe this relationship, even with all its flaws, is as good as it gets. This fear is an illusion created by the ego. The ego thrives on attachment. It tells stories like, without this person you are incomplete. No one else will ever love you. You are too broken to start over. These stories are not truth. They are defense mechanisms. The ego would rather keep you trapped in suffering than risk the vulnerability of the unknown. But here is the paradox. What feels like safety is actually the greatest danger. The true risk is not in letting go, but in staying where you are not valued. The real danger is in continuing to invest your energy, your love, and your time into something that leaves you depleted. Every moment you spend clinging to what is not meant for you is a moment stolen from the life you could be living. Letting go, therefore, is not about loss. It is about liberation. It is the recognition that by releasing what is draining you, you create space for something far greater to enter your life. But let's be honest, this realization doesn't remove the pain overnight. The end of any relationship brings grief. It is human to feel sadness, to miss what once was, to mourn the future you thought you were building. This grief is part of the healing process. Jung described it as the necessary pain that accompanies true growth. Think of grief as a fire. At first it burns, and the heat feels unbearable. But over time the fire refines you. It clears away illusions, old patterns, and attachments that no longer serve you. What emerges is a stronger, clearer version of yourself. So the question is, how do you move through this fear and grief without being paralyzed by it? The first step is to reframe what letting go means. Too often we equate letting go with failure or rejection. We think, if I let this person go, it means I wasn't good enough or I didn't try hard enough. But that is not true. Letting go is not giving up. It is choosing yourself. It is recognizing that love should not feel like constant struggle. It is saying, I refuse to fight for a place in someone's life when I deserve to be chosen freely. The second step is to face the illusion of loss. Ask yourself, what am I truly losing by letting this person go? Am I losing genuine love, or am I losing the illusion of what I hoped love could be? Am I losing real reciprocity, or just the fantasy that one day they might change. Often, what we mourn is not the actual relationship. It is the imagined version of it. We grieve for the potential, the what could have been, more than for the reality. Once you recognize this, you begin to see the truth. You cannot lose what was never truly yours. The third step is to shift your focus from what you are losing to what you are gaining. By letting go, you are gaining freedom. Freedom from doubt, from exhaustion, from the endless cycle of trying to prove your worth. You are gaining energy, energy that can now be invested in your growth, your passions, your healing. Most importantly, you are gaining yourself, the version of you that no longer settles for less than you deserve. The fourth step is to embrace solitude, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. Many people cling to harmful relationships simply because they fear being alone. But Jung taught that true loneliness does not come from being without others. It comes from being disconnected from yourself. You could be surrounded by people and still feel utterly alone if you do not have a deep relationship with yourself. Solitude, on the other hand, can be profoundly healing. It gives you the space to reconnect with your essence, to rediscover your passions, to strengthen the most important relationship you will ever have, the one with yourself. When you cultivate this connection, solitude ceases to feel like emptiness. It becomes a sanctuary, a place of growth and renewal. And here's the beauty. When you no longer fear being alone, your relationships transform. You stop seeking others out of desperation or need. Instead, you choose them freely from a place of wholeness. You no longer cling to those who do not value you, because you know your worth does not depend on anyone else's recognition. This is where individuation, the process Jung described as becoming whole, begins to take root. Individuation is about claiming your identity outside of the roles and expectations imposed by others. It is about no longer defining yourself through someone else's eyes. It is about realizing that the love you have been seeking was within you all along. And once you begin this process, something extraordinary happens. The fear of letting go dissolves, because you see it not as a loss, but as a gateway. You understand that every ending is also a beginning. Every door that closes creates space for a new one to open. Yes, letting go hurts, but the pain is temporary. The peace that follows is lasting. So, the next time you find yourself clinging to someone who does not value you, pause and ask, am I holding on out of love or out of fear? Am I staying because this is truly nourishing me, or because I am afraid of the unknown? The answers to these questions will reveal everything. And once you see the truth, you cannot unsee it. You will realize that the only way forward is to let go. Not because it is easy, but because it is necessary for your growth. The greatest illusion is that letting go is the end of the story. In reality, it is the beginning of the most important story you will ever live. The story of choosing yourself. We have explored the fear of letting go and how much of that fear is rooted in illusion. The illusion of loss. The illusion that we are incomplete without another person. The illusion that the pain of clinging is safer than the uncertainty of release. Now let's move deeper into the heart of transformation. What it truly means to choose yourself and reclaim your power. Letting go of someone who does not value you is not just about ending a relationship. It is about shifting the foundation of how you see yourself. It is about moving from a place of dependence and lack into a place of self-respect and abundance. Think of it like this. Every time you hold on to a relationship that drains you, you are essentially saying to yourself, my needs don't matter as much as theirs. You silence your inner voice. You abandon your own worth. And over time, this erodes not only your self-esteem but also your ability to trust yourself. When you finally decide to let go, you are reversing that pattern. You are telling yourself, I matter. My needs are important. I will no longer silence myself just to keep someone else comfortable. This act is far more powerful than it may seem. It is a declaration that you will no longer betray yourself in the name of love. Jung believed that many of our most painful struggles stem from a disconnection with the self, the deeper, authentic core of who we are. When we abandon ourselves in order to cling to others, we lose touch with this inner center. Our energy becomes scattered, dependent, and fragile. But when we choose ourselves, we realign with the self. We reclaim the energy we had been giving away, and we begin to stand firmly in our own truth. At first, this choice can feel terrifying. After all, our ego resists change. It tells us that choosing ourselves means being alone forever, or that we are being selfish, or that we are walking away from the only love we will ever find. But in reality, choosing yourself is the opposite of selfishness. It is an act of alignment. It means refusing to settle for relationships that diminish you, and by doing so, you create space for relationships that can genuinely uplift you. Think of all the energy you have poured into trying to convince someone to see your worth. All the sleepless nights, the endless overthinking, the desperate attempts to fix things. Now imagine reclaiming all of that energy and investing it into yourself, your passions, your healing, your growth. Imagine how much stronger, clearer, and more vibrant you would feel. That is what happens when you choose yourself. This shift also changes the way you attract relationships. When you radiate self-worth, you naturally draw in people who reflect that worth back to you. Conversely, when you operate from lack or desperation, you attract relationships that mirror that energy. Life responds to the signals you send out. By choosing yourself, you are sending the signal. I know my value. I will only accept love that honors me. Of course, this doesn't mean the path is without challenges. Choosing yourself often requires setting boundaries, something many people struggle with. Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They are about protecting your energy, your peace, and your dignity. They are the line that says, this is what I will and will not accept. For someone who has spent years people-pleasing or overgiving, setting boundaries can feel uncomfortable, even guilt-inducing. But boundaries are essential to healthy love. Without them, relationships become unbalanced, one-sided, and draining. By enforcing boundaries, you are not being unkind, you are honoring yourself. This is where Jung's idea of individuation becomes especially powerful. Individuation is the process of becoming whole by integrating all aspects of yourself, your light and your shadow, your strength and your vulnerability. Part of individuation is realizing that you are not defined by another person's approval or rejection. You are whole, with or without them. When you internalize this truth, relationships stop being a desperate search for completion. Instead, they become a conscious choice. You no longer cling out of fear. You no longer beg for love. You no longer twist yourself into someone else's idea of worthiness. Instead, you stand in your own essence and allow love to flow naturally, without force. And here is the beautiful paradox. When you no longer need love in order to feel complete, that is when the healthiest, most genuine love begins to arrive. Because it is no longer about filling a void. It is about two whole beings choosing to walk together. But what about the people who once took your love for granted? What about the relationships where you gave and gave, only to be met with indifference? Here's the truth. When you reclaim your power and finally let go, those people will notice. Your absence will echo louder than your presence ever did. Because they had grown accustomed to your energy being readily available. And yet, by the time they notice, it will no longer matter. Because the journey is no longer about them. It is about you. You will have already stepped into a new perspective. One where your focus is no longer on who failed to value you, but on how deeply you value yourself. This is one of the most liberating shifts you will ever experience. You stop asking, why didn't they love me enough? And start asking, why did I stay in a place where I was not loved enough? That simple reframe turns the focus inward, where real change happens. Jung emphasized that transformation always begins within. External circumstances may shift, but the true revolution occurs when you change the way you relate to yourself. When you integrate your shadow, heal your wounds, and honor your worth, you no longer tolerate what you once endured. At this stage, letting go transforms from something painful into something empowering. You no longer see it as losing someone. You see it as gaining yourself. You realize that the relationship you were clinging to was never truly about the other person. It was about the part of you that needed to learn the lesson. I am enough. And once that lesson sinks in, everything changes. You no longer settle for crumbs of affection. You no longer wait for someone else to change before you can feel whole. You no longer give your power away. Instead, you live from a place of authenticity, abundance, and self-respect. The journey of choosing yourself is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. Every day, you are faced with choices. Do I honor my boundaries? Or do I compromise them for someone else's comfort? Do I listen to my intuition? Or do I silence it to keep the peace? Do I value myself? Or do I wait for someone else to validate me? Every time you choose yourself, you reinforce your worth. Every time you honor your truth, you strengthen your connection to the self. Over time, these choices accumulate, reshaping not only your relationships but your entire life. So ask yourself, where in your life have you been abandoning yourself for the sake of someone else? Where have you been silencing your needs, suppressing your truth, or tolerating what drains you? And most importantly, are you ready to choose yourself instead? The moment you say yes, the moment you commit to honoring yourself above all else, you step into a new reality. A reality where you no longer cling to what diminishes you, but open yourself to what uplifts you. A reality where love is not a desperate search, but a natural expression of the wholeness you already embody. This is the power of letting go. It is not the end of love. It is the beginning of real love, the kind that starts within you and radiates outward. We have explored what it means to choose yourself and reclaim your power. We saw that letting go is not about loss, but about liberation. It is the courageous act of refusing to abandon yourself for the sake of someone who cannot meet you fully. Now, in this final part, we will bring everything together by asking, what does love look like when it is no longer rooted in fear, clinging, or illusion? The nature of true love. Most people confuse attachment with love. Attachment says, I need you to complete me. Without you, I am nothing. Love says, I am whole and I choose to share myself with you. Attachment is rooted in fear. The fear of being alone, the fear of loss, the fear of not being enough. Love, by contrast, is rooted in freedom. It does not bind or control. It expands. When you cling to someone, you are not truly loving them. You are trying to possess them. You are holding on to them not for who they are, but for what they give you. Validation, comfort, distraction from loneliness. This kind of love is conditional and fragile. The moment the person pulls away, your sense of self collapses, because you had built your identity on their presence. True love, however, is different. It is not about needing, but about giving. It is not about control, but about trust. It does not say, stay with me so I can feel secure. It says, I honor your freedom, and I walk with you because we choose each other. Jung understood love as a force that facilitates individuation. In his view, the purpose of relationship is not to merge into one another and lose yourself, but to reflect, challenge, and awaken each other into greater wholeness. Love is not the erasure of individuality, it is the celebration of it. From illusion to reality. Many of us fall in love not with people, but with projections. We see in them what we long for, what we lack, or what we have yet to accept within ourselves. This is why relationships can feel intoxicating at first. We are not only drawn to the other person, but also to the part of ourselves that we have projected onto them. But this kind of love is fragile because it is not rooted in reality. Eventually, the projection fades, and we are left with the real human being before us, flawed, complex, imperfect. For some, this revelation feels like disappointment. You are not who I thought you were. For others, it is the beginning of deeper love, because they have the courage to meet the person as they truly are, not as they imagined them to be. When you stop clinging, you stop projecting. You begin to love people for who they are, not for what you hope they can be. You stop demanding that they fulfill the unmet needs of your past. You stop expecting them to heal wounds that only you can heal. Instead, you meet them in reality as equals, whole to whole, not half to half. The power of wholeness. Here lies the paradox. Only when you no longer need love do you become ready for it. As long as you are grasping, begging, or chasing, you are not in a position to receive love. You are only seeking to fill a void. But when you cultivate wholeness within yourself, you shift from need to abundance. You no longer approach relationships from a place of lack, but from a place of overflow. This is why the work of letting go and choosing yourself is essential. It is not about rejecting love, it is about preparing for it. By healing your wounds, reclaiming your power, and embracing solitude, you create the conditions for authentic love to flourish. And when it arrives, it feels different from anything you've known before. There is no desperation, no endless questioning, no constant fear of abandonment. Instead, there is peace. You feel safe to be yourself, because you know your worth does not depend on their opinion. You feel free to let them be themselves, because you do not need to control or possess them. This kind of love is not a roller coaster of highs and lows. It is a steady fire, warm and sustaining. It grows slowly, but it grows deeply. And because it is rooted in truth, it does not crumble when faced with challenges. Love is freedom. One of Jung's most powerful insights was that true love cannot exist without freedom. To cling is to imprison both yourself and the other person. It suffocates love, turning it into dependency. But when you release the need to control, love transforms. It becomes expansive, not restrictive. Imagine a bird perched on your hand. If you grip it tightly, you crush it. If you open your hand, the bird may fly away, or it may choose to stay. Either way, your love for the bird is not measured by how tightly you hold on, but by how freely you allow it to exist. The same is true of human relationships. Love is not about binding someone to you. It is about creating an environment where they feel free to stay. And paradoxically, the more freedom you allow, the stronger the bond becomes, because it is built on choice, not fear. The ripple effect of self-love. When you begin to embody this truth, when you stop clinging and start choosing, you don't just transform your romantic relationships. Every connection in your life begins to shift. You start to surround yourself with people who honor your worth, because you no longer tolerate those who don't. You bring more authenticity into friendships, family dynamics, and even work relationships, because you are no longer hiding parts of yourself to be accepted. This ripple effect extends beyond relationships. Choosing yourself opens up energy for creativity, for passion, for purpose. It allows you to live more fully, because you are no longer draining your spirit by clinging to what diminishes you. And perhaps most importantly, you begin to experience a deeper connection with life itself. You realize that you were never truly alone, because the self, the deeper essence within you, was always with you. You realize that love is not something you must chase, but something that flows naturally when you are aligned with your truth. The final lesson. So here is the ultimate truth. You do not have to fight for love. You do not have to prove your worth, beg for attention, or cling in fear. Real love is not a battlefield, it is a sanctuary. It is not about losing yourself, it is about finding yourself more deeply through the mirror of another. But you cannot reach this kind of love until you are willing to let go of its counterfeit. You must release the illusions, the attachments, the fears, and the projections. You must dare to walk away from what diminishes you, even when it feels terrifying. In doing so, you discover something far greater than the love of another person. You discover the love of the self, and from this foundation, every other relationship becomes richer, freer, and more authentic. As Jung would remind us, the task of life is not to seek love outside of ourselves, but to integrate, to become whole, and to live from that wholeness. Once we do, love ceases to be something we cling to. It becomes something we embody. And in that moment, you will understand letting go was never the end. It was always the beginning. If this journey spoke to your heart, imagine what more is waiting for you. Don't let this be the end of your healing. Let it be the beginning. Subscribe now and take the next step toward freedom, wholeness, and the love you deserve.